What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. We're continuing our Supabase series, and in this video we're going to be working with the Supabase Database, and we're going to be working on the Xcode project that we already have from our authentication part of the series. I have it right here. If you guys didn't watch that, then you might want to watch it unless you don't really care about the auth. And if you don't watch it, all you're going to have to do is go to Supabase and bring in some packages. You see here we have the Supabase package. I believe that's the only one we brought in. Let's go to the documentation really quickly. And actually go back. Let's go to Swift. And now we're at the documentation. And we're going to be working with the database. So this is what we're going to be doing. Supabase makes it pretty straightforward. But now we have to implement this in our project. And we're going to be working on a to-do list. So let's go to the home view. And I believe in our home view, we should have we have a VStack with just 2 texts. Let's just create a different view. New view, and this would be a Swift UI view. We'll call this to-do view. All right, so what are we gonna need for this view? So we're gonna need let's start with a Z stack, and we're gonna need a lazy V stack, and for each data and content. And for each data, this is where we're gonna implement the fetching of the to-do list items. So I'm going to create a view model really quickly. Class, to do, view model, observable object. And I'm doing it right here on top of this, so we don't have to, we can see both of them at the same time while we do this. We'll create a publish variable. Will be to-dos. And we're going to have to create an object. We'll create a struct of to-do. And for now, let's just create not a name, a text for the to-do. And we can do an array of to-do. And now we can initialize the state object for to-do. We'll just call this view model to-do view model, command B, and view model dot to delete. We got to-do.text. There we go. Then we need to add an ID. You do // dot text, and command B. And be mindful, if you have to-do items that are the same text, then you might get an error with this. Then you might be able to use self. If that's the case, then you'll have to conform to identifiable and create an ID. Let's create some mock data in here. Var mock data. We'll make this an array of to-do text homework. And then I'm just gonna copy this a bunch of times. It should be good. Homework code. So I created some mock data. And instead of to-dos, let's do mock data and see how this looks. This will probably, We're going to keep this as the UI, and we'll come back to the UI. Let's go back to Supabase. And I'm going to go to my Supabase project. For us, it's Supabase series. If you haven't created a project, then create that. And we need to go to database, and we need to go to tables, and we need to create a new table. And we can create the table, name it to-do or to-dos. You can make a description if you want. We enable row level security. We're going to do something else because we enable this. But if you just disable it, then you won't have to worry about or do the next step we do after this. Otherwise, just leave it checked. And we have an ID, that'll be good. We'll make sure it's unique. Created at. All right. That's good to keep. And now we just need the text, and we go to right here, this column, and you do text. We shouldn't have null for this. If we do, that's an issue. So I'm going to uncheck that. And default value is, we can just, because I believe we'll override it. So we'll do error. And we're going to add another column for user UID. And we're going to link the to-do item to the current user, whoever is creating this to-do item. We're gonna link their UID to this to the row that we create, because we're gonna create a row every time we insert a new to-do item in this to-dos table. And we need to go to auth, and for auth we go to users. We have an instance ID and ID. Action if removed. So if the auth.user is deleted, there's an error. All right, so we'll go with Cascade. You can read here the description, what it does. So Cascade, if we delete the user, it'll also delete their information, which that's what Apple tells us to do, I believe. So let's do that. And you can also do no action, which you'll get an error if you try to delete a user. And let's hit save. Now let's hit save on our table. And maybe we'll come back and add more, but for now we'll leave it like this. And so our table is created. The last thing we need to do is go to our row level policies, and you go to authentication, you go to policies, to-dos. You see that RLS is enabled. You could disable it or create a policy. They have some templates you can use. Enable read access to everyone, for example. And this is the one we're going to use. You could also use, they have you could read the templates here. You could base it on their email, if they're authenticated or not. You could base it on their UID. We'll enable read access. We'll just use the one that's for everyone. And instead of just select, we can do all. Do all. Enable all access. This will allow everyone select, insert, delete, and update items. And we'll do review. Save that. Now we should be able to use this. All right, so now we go back to supabase.com, the documentation, and we're going to go down to Swift, which is right here behind me. We click on it, and let's insert data first, since we need data before we can read data. To insert data, it's very straightforward. We're going to close this, go back to our Supabase, and let's close the simulator for now. And let's create some functions. So the first function we want to create is func fetch items for user string. We'll say for UID. And this will most likely be async throws. The other function we'll need is a create item. This will be async throws. In our create item function, we need to take in some text, string. All right. So I'm going to create some mark statements really quickly. All right. So I created the functions. All right. So now that we stamped out our functions, one thing I want to do is I want to add some more, or just one more property to our struct here, the to-do struct. And if we open up Supabase, we go back to our table. You see we have 4 properties that are in our, that's going to be on each row for our to-dos. And the first one is the ID and the created at. Those are the first 2. And with these, you could ignore them when you're sending the data to Supabase, and Supabase will automatically create it for you. They'll create the ID and the created at timestamp. So that means all we would need to send is the text and the user UID. So I'm going to create that now. User UID. This can be a type string. So let's fix this. And that. You could just do an empty string. Or now we can work on sending this to Supabase. So first we would create a to-do from our text and the UID. And then we would have to send this off to the database. But first, let's create a database manager where we can bring in Supabase and use all the functionality and create all our functions for all our CRUD operations. I'm going to go to the auth manager, and I'm just going to copy this beginning part. This is going to be very similar. And I don't want to, and we're going to have to copy like the key and all that other stuff. So might as well copy this. Let's import Supabase. And instead of auth, we can copy this database manager. So let's create our function for the create. We'll call this func create to do item. And we'll just take in an item, which will be of type to do. This will be async throws. Command B. And let's create one for fetch to do items. We're not going to stamp it out yet. I'm just creating it. And here we can call try away. We call our client database dot from. This is where you go back to Supabase and you get the name of your table. For us, it's to-dos. So it'd be to-dos. Then you want to say dot insert values to item. The last thing you need to do is call execute, otherwise this won't run. And I believe we get a response. Let's go back to the execute, and yeah, we get a response. That response equal this. And in our response, we actually get a lot of stuff. And when you're creating an item, as long as this doesn't fail or throw an error, then that means that it was posted successfully. I want to print the response, the status, and I also want to print I want to see if the response returns any data. And you can do that by calling underline response.data. Now we go back to our to-do, and we can call this. So we say try await database manager shared create item for to-do. All right, and before we send this off, if you try to run this or implement this in your project, this will fail because this is going to be sent. It's going to send the user UID like this in camel case, and Supabase is expecting snake case. And there's two ways we can handle this, and one way to handle that is if you use a JSON encoder. And then you make that encoder key decoding strategy equal to convert to snake case. That's one way. Although I don't like that because then you would have to encode your data, and it requires a lot more steps than the other way. The other way is to create a private enum here. Call it coding keys. Conform to string and coding keys. Case text and case user UID. Then we say this one is equal to user underscore UID. Now you get rid of the S, and that fixes our error. Looks like I added an S there at the end. And now these are the coding keys that will be used when it's either encoding or decoding the data. So it'll know, oh, instead of sending it like this in camel case, we'll send it in snake case. And we can test this out now. Let's see. We can say on up here. Actually, let's go to our app file. Let's go to our content view. Let's go to our home view. Try this in our home view. Be a lot easier to test in here. So on up here, we can call try await. Now we don't have a reference to the view model. Let's just create a reference. Should be able to call this. Well, we have to wrap this in a task. Do, then catch. Paste that in there. Let's print error. And let's create a task or to do. Let's say finish course. And our UID will be app user UID command B. And let's run this bad boy. Looks like we got success. So this looks like this is what's in the response. All right. And our app, we're just signed into the Supabase at Gmail account. If we go back to Supabase, refresh this, it should be 3 rows now. Yep. So this is 3 rows. And if you go here to table editor and you select to do, you should be able to see all our entries. These are ones that I did earlier when I was playing around with this. And Now you see the finished course one, and it's attached to our UUID or our UID. If you go up in the simulator, the UID matches, which is good news. And this means that our function is working. So we can cut this. Get rid of this on up here. Go back to our to-do view. And let's see. For now, I'm gonna put it in here, just so I have it saved. And I'm not gonna, let's not call it when we run this. And let's try to fetch our items. Let's go to the database manager and fetch items for UID string. And let's see. So we should call try await client database from to-dos. When you want to fetch data, you need to use select. And if we left it like this and then called execute, this would select all the to-do items on the table. And I believe we don't have any security policy set, so anyone could fetch everyone's to-dos in our application. So that's, be careful with that. Then we want to call equals. And you want to use a string user UID. That's the column. We want to make sure that the user UID equals our UID that we have. And we can actually even order these. Let's do, you do order. I'm going to hit options to get all of them. I'm going to delete the first or the last two. And for column, we can order it by created at. Oh, this should be underscore. And for ascending, it depends on what you want. Like if you want the most recent up top or the oldest up top. I'm going to do false. That should put the oldest at the top. I think so. We'll find out right now. And then we call execute and we get a response. Just like before. And let's do the same thing we did before. Let's print this. See what we get. And actually so I'm gonna go back to Supabase. And let's go back to the Supabase docs. Swift. By the way, for the fetch, in these examples, they don't have like the way we're doing it in our example. That's just something to note if you're reviewing the documentation. But what I did is I used like the other documentation they have, and I was able to find the equals function because their JavaScript documentation is a lot like it's very expansive, and the Swift library is kind of similar to it. Like they try to keep it similar, the way that they insert, delete, update, all of those. And this is something I wanted to mention. And now let's go back to our to-dos. So I believe we call our database manager shared fetch items for, let's change this to UID. We could do the same. We could say for UID. Do we need anything? For this, we would return an array of to-dos. But right now, we're not doing that because we just want to see it printed. So let's try await view model. Actually, we got to go back to our home view if you want to test this. So we'll copy this, go back to our home view. Let's delete this space. Paste this in here. All right, this is the last time we're going to try this in our home view. I'm just it makes it a lot easier to to test. And we should have some stuff printed. Boom, there's a lot. My camera died, folks, but we're moving on. All right, and if you see, we got a 200 success. We go back to our data manager, and we're printing data, so that's why we have these bytes. And we no longer need this response. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. And a cool way to print data is you do string data. You paste this in there, and then you do UTF-8, run it. And now we should see the data. Oh, and we see here. Oh, and this is saying the newest one first. So if you want the newest first, you do false. Else you do true. You want the oldest ones first. So now we see that our data is going to be equal to this. And what do we want to do now? Now we need to decode this. In our responses, we're getting an ID and our created at, which is different from our to do, right? And I'm going to change the implementation. I'm going to rename this. Just right click and then hit rename and then refactor to do payload. And I'm going to create another struct. Call this to do. And this will have the ID. Type int of created at string let text string and then let user UID string. And we'll use this one to decode our data. And if we go back here, so you want to return an array of to-dos. So now let's create a decoder. Try actually no wait. First we got to create our decoder. And then decoder dot key decoding strategy convert from snake case. Since our properties will be a snake case, the user ID and the created at or user UID. Sorry about that. And now we should say decoder.decode to do.self from data. And this is an array. Because yeah, it'll be an array of to-dos. So let to-dos. And if we're doing it right, this should be an array of to-dos. Let's see. Yeah. So we can, I want to print it first, but we can return to-dos. Hit Command B. I'll remove this print statement in a second. Let's run this and see what's up. Hey, we get a list of to-dos. And we could return the to-dos. So let's get rid of this print. Actually, let's go back to our app. And let's sign out and sign in with somebody else. So make sure that they can't see this. So I believe I have an rocky@gmail.com. Yeah, Rocky. Oh yeah, we get an empty array. And if we sign back in to our Supabase at Gmail, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sign in. Boom. It's back. And bam, it's perfect. And now we just have to return an array of to-dos here. And we can just say return this, Command B. All right. So I did a little bit of refactoring. All I did was remove our view model into its own file. I created a folder for our to-do and created these files. Well, I moved the to-do view in here, and I created the to-do view model and the to-do file, which contains our two models, the payload and the to-do. Now we need to figure out how we want to pass the UID to this view. And we can do that requiring this view to have a user. So we'll say app user is required at initialization. And we can get rid of this by just hit fix and .init and then just 2 empty strings. Then we're going to head to our content view. And in here, we're going to change it from home view. Get rid of home view. And now we're going to present our to-do view, which pass in the app user. And we can get a non-optional user with this. Otherwise, this would be optional since this is optional here. And this is just one way to access the UUID for the current user. You could save this in like user defaults and fetch it from there whenever we want to make this request. But I'm just passing in the whole app user to this view. It really depends on your use case, which one is better for you. And there's probably a few other ways too that you could go about passing the UID and storing it. But the two main ways I'd say are probably passing the user in or storing the UID like in user defaults and fetching it from there. All right, so we go back to our to-do view. Now we have access to the to-do view and we have to set up our UI. So in our to-do, first, let's embed this in a navigation stack. So embed navigation stack. Now what we can do is, let's shift this. We can call navigation title to-do. Boom, that looks nice. Then we can call toolbar. And in the toolbar, we can create a toolbar item. In our toolbar, we can create let's see if we can create a button with an action and a label. Print, add, and then let's create an image. System image. I'm going to go up here and look up image names. I think it's like circle.fill. No, I think it might be plus circle. There we go. Resizable. All right, I'm back. So my Xcode randomly crashed. Don't know what happened. And the image we want to add here is plus.circle.fill. Let's make this resizable. Can we change the frame? I think since it's a toolbar, we might not be able to. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we can. I like the 32. Can we add some padding? Ooh. Let's add a smaller amount of padding. Let's do 8. 4. 4 is good. Actually, without padding, padding of 2. And let's add a foreground color. So let's do green for Supabase. Although I don't think that's a Supabase green. But now if we hit add, let's pull up the terminal. Add, there we go. Okay. Instead of a button, let's change this to a navigation link. And we'll get I believe we'll get an error on this print, yeah. And let's create a new file. Call this create to do view. And in this file, we can pass in the environment object, view model, do view model, Command B. Oh, no, when you pass in an environment object, you just have to put the type. You don't instantiate it. And this will give us an issue with the preview. So we're going to say, and we can just create a state var. Call this name. This will be of actually you don't need to put the type. You can just say double empty string. And then we can say text field with the title and a text. Title is the placeholder, I believe. Oh, and I think we have an app text field, right? Yep. The placeholder is, what's the placeholder? Enter. Please enter the name of whatever of your task. Or you could just say, please enter your task. And the text, let's just call this text. It's a binding, so you do $text, Command B, and rerun the build. And let's create a VStack with this. Yeah, the text field, we can have like a title up top. What should we call this? Create new task. We'll say task. Since saying create new to-do is, we can say create a to-do. We'll just use that for our, you can say large title. And this is when you guys can change it to whatever you would like. And a neat way to get this VStack to show up top is we're gonna say we'd use frame and then you use max width dot infinity max height infinity and then you do alignment dot top. Boom, and then we can add some padding to the VStack. Oh, wrong one. Padding dot top. Refresh the build. And actually, let's do all since the text field was hugging the edges. And we could do some more horizontal padding. It's up to your personal preference. I don't like the way that to-do looks. We'll keep it a little bit wider. Oh, and the last thing we're missing is a button. Do we have a custom button? I don't think we created one. Although the neat thing about when you write code is you can go back and and copy it. Which, if you do that, you might want to think if it might be better to refactor and create a custom item, or is it whether it's a class or something like that. Maybe you can refactor it, and that way you don't have just copy and pasted code all over your project. For this example, we're just gonna copy it, and we're not gonna worry about creating a custom button. Although in a real project, quote unquote, I'd probably do that, create a custom button. But just to save us some time, just gonna paste this in here. This would be, should we say create? Yeah. And let's add some spacing. Spacing. What do we want for spacing? Let's do 20. See how that looks. I kind of want a little bit more. Let's do 40. Too much. 30. 25 is probably good enough. Yeah. And if we go to our to-do, we can create or put the create to-do view. And we need to make sure you pass the environment object. Otherwise, this will crash when you run it. And can we navigate in the preview? Let's see. Oh yeah, let's just navigate in the preview. Create a to-do. All right, back in our to-do on our create to-do view. Once this is created, we can call our function here, task. I think we have it in our to-do, right? We can copy this do catch block, paste it in here, and instead of, you can just say view model dot create item. And it looks like we need to pass the app user to this. The app user. Command B, we'll get some issues. The preview dot init double quote, go back to our to-do. We should get an error. We can get rid of this on appear function. Oh, hit command B again. The fix randomly went somewhere else. And we can just pass app user. Boom, hit command B, and there we go. And up here, we can bring in the environment, and we need to call /dismiss. Call var dismiss. And now we'll have access to the dismiss. So on a success, we can dismiss, and we'll go to create items. This is good to go. Now we need to update our view model though. So let's do this, change this to to-dos. Go back to the to-do view, and instead of mock data, let's use to-dos. Command B, see if we have any issues. And one thing I want to check is, I'm gonna go to our to-do view, and in our create function, there's one thing I want to handle, which is if the text is already, if the to-do that's being created is already in our to-dos list, then we want to return an error or just throw an error and not add it. One way to do that is we're gonna create a guard, and we're gonna guard against the to-dos array dot contains, and we can just use a curly brace. And if you see, so this to-do, this contains is going to go through each item in our to-dos, and we can access each of those items using a curly brace, and then we do $0, and we're going to say where text is equal, and we'll say text. Else you can throw ns error print already in to-do list. Okay, and all right, so this function, this contains function, is searching our to-dos and figuring out where our text in each of these to-do items is equal to the text we're about to add. And one thing we need to add to is this dot lowercase. That'll get rid of any same name but different like capitalization, which would fail here. And the last thing in regards to this guardlet is we actually have to add a not here, because this will return true if the text we're trying to add is contained in the list. When you guard against a condition, it only goes to the else case if it fails. So that way, that's why we add the not here, because we want to make sure that to-dos does not contain the text we're about to add. All right, and now we're almost ready to fetch. Now I think we're ready to go. The last thing we need to do is where we want to fetch this, and we can fetch it here on appear in this to-do view. And so I'm gonna go to the create and copy this. Go down here, add in on up here, paste in the what we just copied, and instead of create, we do fetch items and then do app user.uid. Command B. Can get rid of this dismiss, and we could also, instead of returning this to list of to-dos, we can just update our to-dos up here. Since the our view is listening to those changes, and any changes to our to-dos array will be published. The only thing we have to do is put this on the main actor. Hit Command B. This looks ready to go. And before we run this, because there's two things we're testing: the fetch and the create. But I notice here in this create, this should be text. And something I really quickly want to do, I'm gonna guard against text.count. Actually, let's just do if text.count is greater than 2. I'm just gonna quickly put this in here. Typically, you would put this in the view model right here in this create. You could put it in here and then just throw an error if the count was less than 2. All right, or less than 3. Let's run this. All right, so our app opens up. Boom, code, sleep, finish course. Yeah, that's what's in our thing for this user. So that means our fetch is working. What about our create? What should we create? Let me move this. It's right behind me. Let's say drink. Let's say clean room. Hit create. Boom, it's added. Aha. And if we go to our, oh, there it is. It's added there. Let's try to add code, lowercase c and capital C. Actually, let's do capital C. Boom, print error. Oh, I think we're throwing an NS error. That's why the issue is. And let's go to our view model. Okay, we got the already in our to-do list. When the issue is because we threw NS error. So it didn't know what to print, like for the error. It didn't know what the error was. Let's try now. So if we do code again, you get an error. Already in our to-do list. And let's try code with a lowercase c. Already in our to-do list. And I think we have sleep. Boom, already in our to-do list. This looks good to go. I'm going to stop here for this video. We added our fetch functionality and our insert add functionality and or create. You see a lot of names for it. It could be insert, create, add, all of the above. But yeah, I'm going to stop here for now. We're going to continue with this though. We still need to add our delete. We need to make this look nicer because now it's just a list like this. This looks ugly. But we're going to make it look nicer here in a second. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think about the series so far. If there's anything I missed or didn't cover, any questions you might have. I know there was somebody in the comments. What was his name? Shout out to Richard. He mentioned something about the dismiss actually. That when you call dismiss, you don't need to, because there's two ways to call it. You could have called it as a function or you just do 2 parentheses. It really depends on the use case. I'll link an article below that goes through the differences between both of them. But I hope you guys are enjoying the series. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
I'm riding between it all in this perfect play. I'm a piece of the buzz, woman fit where you need me, baby.